Thank you, MC Roshan, who I understand is put up an ad for hire. So if you're an MC, please look him up. Your small advert. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for staying back for this fourth, but to me, a very exciting and very important session on extracurricular activities, which is often been neglected, I would say. We'll use the strong word neglected. Some would say put a second priority. And let me just introduce myself first. My name is Voon. I am the research director for KSI. And this topic is very dear to my heart because I am very involved in the extracurricular programs in school currently. And also partially because in school I wasn't good in studies, so you can only be good at extracurricular programs anyway. So let me just set the stage for this program. We have 4 very distinguished speakers, and we will take 7 minutes for each speaker first to make their inputs. But I'd like to first introduce them. Sitting on my right, a good friend, Datin Hajah, Azimah Rahim, who is the chairperson of the Parents Action Group for Education Malaysia, and she was also on the Advisory Council for the Ministry of Education between 2018 to 2020. And on my furthest right, we have Ms. Noor Nordin, who is the founder of Ray Nautics, focus on Ray Nautics, which focuses on maritime-related services, and also the founder of Ranga House, a company offering an array of IT services. But she is here today as the International Commissioner for the Scouts Association of Malaysia, and I believe a Sea Scout, if not mistaken, right? On my left, we have Puan Wak Jemaah Mina Kampok, who is the Vice President for English Language at the National Union of Teaching Professions, NUTP, who is also a teacher at SMK Perempuan Air Panas, Kuala Lumpur, with 32 years experience as a teacher. Wow. And on our furthest left, we have Miss Hayley Trenchard, who is also an educator, a teacher for the English language, history, special needs. She's been to China, done some education there, a principal of an international school, and today she is here as the project lead for Leap Ed Services, Sendirian Berhad. So we've got quite a wide area of experiences, and we'd like to touch on this niche area on extracurricular education. As we mentioned earlier in earlier sessions, soft skills is very important, and I think you can get the vibe from this summit that is more focused on how to prepare our graduates for the workplace. And to do well, you need a combination of both academics and also soft skills. And there's no way better to do this but through extracurricular education. So I'd like to start off first by getting the panel to give me 7 minutes each of their insights, perhaps share a little bit of their experiences in this this extracurricular area. So perhaps I'd like to start with Datin first.
Hello. Okay. Can hear. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Voon, moderator, and hello to our distinguished panelists. It's correct that co-curriculum is a neglected area. In fact, even if you look at the crowd who has stayed behind, you can see that co-curriculum is a neglected topic because half of the crowd is gone. But seriously, I think it's not surprising because even in school, co-curriculum is an area which has been, again, neglected only because there's so much emphasis on the academics that I think only a certain percentage of your holistic education, supposedly, as you move forward, is related to co-curriculum. In fact, co-curriculum, if you look at it in the primary schools, of course, standard 1 to 3, you don't have any co-curriculum. They go off early. But in standard 4, 5, 6, you have co-curriculum Wednesdays. And it again, and for them, for the standard force, is very exciting when they start co-curriculum on Wednesdays, because they get to wear the school uniform, the COCO uniform on Wednesdays. Even though you don't have COCOs on some days, you still go to school in your COCO uniform on Wednesdays, and you have to pick, the sport and the society and the badan beruniform. Again, very exciting, but when you look back, you wonder what they really learned from this, because again, it also depends on the leadership that is running these societies. For instance, you could have the boys, of course, love football. We should also introduce football for girls, but that's not happening. You have chess club, but you actually really want the kids to go out and sweat it out rather than sit in an aircon room for chess. And then you move on to secondary school when they start Form 1. A little bit more exciting. Again, if you were in what's this green badan uniform, you're learning to march in standard 4. In Form 1, you're still learning to march, and as Form 4, you're still marching, and you don't do very much except march, And then in Putri Islam, in primary school, you probably learn to be a good wife, and then, so you think about the value of co-curriculum. And then you move on to upper secondary. Form 4 appears to be, the objective appears to be getting into the committee. And whether or not you conduct into the committee, whether or not you conduct activities during the year is a big question mark. Again, leadership coming from the teachers is very important. And then in Form 5, you quickly want to get into the committee. You don't do anything after that because you're having to go for tuition classes. So the value of co-curriculum, I think, is very, very questionable. And the kids are not getting the best from what should be in school. And sometimes it becomes, even for teachers, it becomes a chore, What are we going to do for co-curriculum? If we do something, is it going to excite the students or not? So I think now that we are in the pandemic, I think parents have now got a feel of what homeschooling is. And they see their children on the gadgets, on the devices learning. Some are good at it, some are not. But I think at the end of, say, the morning session, parents are already ready to open the doors of the house and let the children loose, because they see that I think the mental health of the children are affected with online learning. So in fact, in the UK, forest schools are very important. Forest schools are outdoor sort of activity setups where students go for things like they learn to play hide and seek, they do den building, and this is something that was started in Scandinavia actually, and I think it's been going on for about decades already in UK. If you localize it, it'd probably be equivalent to a jungle school here, But I think in the end, it's I think parents have to take things into their own hands. I think post-pandemic, as we come out of the pandemic into the endemic stage, I think parents realize that outdoor activity is so important. So even if it means, and it's something that you cannot rely on the school anymore. We have to bring the kids out to the playground, to the park, to the beach, any outdoor activity. And I think parents realize maybe before the weekend activity was going to the shopping mall, but it's not anymore. It's now more an outdoor activity, getting the kids to sweat, to run, to exercise, with parents accompanying them, doing all these things. And I think that co-curriculum also, I think we need to bring more meaning into co-curriculum in schools. For instance, I think during the pandemic, we probably saw weaknesses or challenges within the community. And the pandemic itself has also exposed excesses within the community. So let's bring meaning to co-curriculum. Let's think about doing activities with the community. You know, for instance, maybe students can be seen as a source of future talent. That's what we've been talking about today. If within the community there is maybe woodwork as an income for the community, maybe the students can have regular sessions with this craftsman who can come in and teach them skills. That could be a co-curriculum activity. So it has to be something that's sustainable. That's the word trending now. It has to be sustainable, whereby schools are seen as a resource, you know, rather than we do a few silly activities and then next year we do a few other silly activities and then we leave school after that. And there's no learning, there's no value system gained from the activities. Hence, probably that's why co-curriculum is considered neglected, because there is no meaning to why these kids don't understand why they have to do this. In fact, kids see co-curriculum as a nuisance unless they are directly involved. I think one of the particular activities they especially like is I think Rotary Club comes into schools, you know, and they have this IU Day, which they organize and raise funds and all that. And then after that, it just dies out. There's no sustainability. There's no continuity. And then the next batch comes in the next year, and they repeat this. They repeat it. You know. So I think it has to be community based. I think, you know. I think co-curriculum needs to have a facelift, have a rethink, a review, and see how co-curriculum can actually benefit the community, rather than you know, communities and schools working in silos. I think that's my contribution today.
Thank you so much, Datin, for giving us a parent's perspective on these activities. I think a lot of them cleared out because of traffic jam and conference fatigue rather than the lack of interest in the topic. I hope, I'm optimistic. Okay, I'd like to move on to Ms. Noor. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. 7 minutes, thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone. So, I may be introduced as the International Commissioner for the Scouts Association Malaysia today, but on a practical side, I'm also a Scout leader, and I run 2 community-based units, one in Kuala Lumpur and one in Malacca. So I do understand where parents are coming from with regards to this neglected part of education, co-curriculum. I am faced with everyday WhatsApp messages from the parents regarding, do you do this? And not just from homeschoolers, from school-going parents as well. If I enroll my son or daughter into your community-based scouting, how does that contribute to my son and daughter's involvement in a uniform unit in school? And to be frank, we're not different from how co-curriculum scouting per se is run in school. In fact, we allow transfer of credits, and that helps with the enthusiasm of doing scouting from the child as well as the parent. I'm sure you all know the parents are actually more enthusiastic than the children in doing scouting. So I'm going to start by saying that in scouting, we don't do marching. And they're like, oh, no, we actually don't. We're taught to walk properly. Yeah, and that's what the founder says. He says that we're not imitation soldiers, we're scouts. So first, learn to walk properly. That's it. Now, if your child is a scout in school and all you hear from your child is, oh, we did marching today, I'm so sorry. But like what Datin said earlier, it's highly dependent on the leader. If the leader, whether it be a volunteer parent or a teacher or someone like myself, not from the education background, but who has been in this movement since 13 years old, so you will then find that the dynamism of the leader will be translated into said troop. On the national front, of course, the majority of our stakeholders are government school-going children. But we have quite a substantial population of those from community-based scouting. And during the pandemic, of course, those who go to school would be hampered very much. But you find that some of the community-based scouting, they thrive during the pandemic. And this is also, I must thank, to a certain extent, the support from the Ministry of Education, who actually gave endorsement to credit these virtual programs into the children's PAJSK marks. So although most organizations would be facing a decline in their membership during the pandemic, but I am happy to share that the Scouts Association Malaysia membership tripled during the pandemic. And we see the pandemic as an opportunity to engage with our stakeholders even more on a personal level, more regular, although boring, but that's what other choice do we have? And when the government went into different phases of lockdown and opening, so whenever there was the opportune moment to meet, of course, within the SOP, and we get a tremendous response and the look of happiness and relief from the children when we organize physical meets or adventurous journeys or excursions for them. So again, if you wonder what we do as Scouts, we're not champions hikers. We're not like the ultimate Rambo, we're not. But what we are and what leaders do, we use nature, the outdoors, as a platform to instill good character in good citizenship. So that's what Scout units are supposed to be doing, not marching. Yeah. So that's, and yes, right now, of course, we have co-curricular meetings allocated in schools six times a year. Let me rephrase that. 6 times, 45 minutes each time on a weekday in the morning. You're not going to get any character building out of that. So the problems the association is facing with giving quality scouting or non-formal education to government school-going children is exactly that, time. 10, 15 years ago, or at least in my time, I'm not very old, but in my time, it's Saturdays, every Saturdays in the year, minimum 3 hours in the morning from 9 to 12. And we tend to stretch it to 2 or 3 p.m., and then we get a good shelling from our parents, but never mind. But point being, times have changed, and it is now definitely neglected because schools are just going for the bare minimum. 6 meets a year. 6 meets a year, 45 minutes per meet on a Wednesday morning. Give and take 7:30 or 8 o'clock if they have a morning assembly. So you have that as a challenge. Number 2, there is no way, if you're given these parameters as a leader, a teacher in a school, you look at your KPI and you go like, oh, I'm supposed to create King Scouts out of this? For your information, King Scout is the coveted youth award. If you see someone having this badge, the King Scout Award badge, it means this person has hiked at least 114 kilometers in his or her lifetime, have gone through more than 20 camping nights, able to tie 40 knots blindfolded. Okay, I'm just kidding. But point being is that when you meet a person like this, a King Scout, you will find that he or she stands out in a line of interviewees. This person will stand out. And by Scout's honor, is trustworthy, so to speak, and you will see a lot of initiative from this kind of person. Now, I don't think 6 meets a year is going to cut out this kind of character out of how many people in the school. And in the community scouting sector, we try our best. But bear in mind, community scouting leaders are normally either parents or people like myself, not from the education sector, who still, work, have family. So it's all voluntary basis, and there's only so much that we can try to make the good. Ben Pao used to say, if you see a really naughty boy, naughty girl, maybe this person is just 90% naughty. But your job as a leader is to take this 10% and make it 100%. And that's dedication. I mean, if not to your own children, like I'm not married and I have to take care of 100 over stakeholders. And that's my role as a leader in community-based scouting. And I have to assess their personal progression, put them into a team system, tell them of the symbolic framework, support them as an adult leader, and ensure that the community surrounding them also supports their becoming into a good citizen. So from the community front, as well as the schools front, we're facing challenges, basically with these regulations from the, not regulations, I think they're like minimal parameters to meet. And that stops us from doing the real work of creating a good force in creating a better world. So that's all from me.
Well, thank you, Norma. I think we'll circle back to a lot of the issues that you raised, especially if you consider that scouts require volunteers to come in. How are they going to come in when they are supposed to work also, to the schools when they are set on Wednesdays? Sometimes twice, sesi pagi, sesi petang, you have to take leave the whole day. And you're right, 6 meets, how are they going to tie knots? They're probably not going to remember your name when you come back the next time. So understand your dilemma, but we'll come back to that in a short while. But I'd like to hear from the other side of the story, from a teacher's perspective on some of these things. But Puan Wak Jemaah, so as a teacher, there are also some struggles being required to deliver teaching, meeting the requirements, minimum requirements for teaching, and also being asked to take care of extracurricular programs. So I'd like to hear your thoughts and your struggles as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Boon. Okay, I just would like to share my experience. I have the experience of teaching primary school. Now I'm teaching secondary school for more than 21 years. Over the years, it is always the same task where we conduct extracurricular activities with the students. Students will join the clubs, societies, games, or uniform units. Even now, it is the same thing that we are doing. Okay, so in terms of when we talk about co-curricular activity being neglected, I sort of agree, because we only spend, say, on Wednesday morning, as been discussed just now, maybe 45 minutes or 50 minutes, depending on the school, and an hour probably in the afternoon. But that is the time allocated for such activities. Okay, so that is what teachers have to do. Okay, but I also would like to share on the joy and how important it is extracurricular activities for students. Back on those days, it is the only time where every student will look forward to, or for these particular extracurricular activities, where students will have the joy of running free on the field. Now, the marching part is also important. I I like the marching part, even though we do that year in and year out, because there is competition at the end of that marching. It is just not we march every week for nothing. You know, students will be like, for example, student march before sports activity, or sometimes they have competitions, state level, national level. So it is actually fun, you know, sweating under the sun, shouting and screaming and all that. And then through all these activities, students can actually discover a lot. They learn a lot. They learn leadership. They learn how to work in a team. They also learn their own strengths, weaknesses, what they like and what they don't like. And this is the time when we teachers also discover new talents. So you cannot see much in the classroom, because classroom is basically focusing more on academic, preparing them for the examinations. So you know, when you teach in a class, you will not know that a child in front of you can actually sing, or a child in front of you can really run. All this talent can only surface during co-curricular activities. So over the years, these are some of the activities which I actually really enjoy. But then back to the question, teachers juggling between academics and extracurricular activities. Most of the teachers, we don't have professional training how to run a club, or how to run societies, or how to run a uniform units. With that basic knowledge we have, we did our job. Of course, there'll be one or two teachers who will undergo professional trainings. So these are the teachers who normally be able to train the student and prepare them for competitions. So that much only the teachers can do. So every year we have new challenges. From the time I started teaching 33 years ago, co-curricular activity has becoming, I would not want to say the word burden, but has become a challenge for teachers, because there's a lot of reports, documentation, all this involved. So this actually takes up a lot of the teacher's time. Back those days when I was teaching in primary school, it was just so much fun and joy. We run on the field freely with the students, no documentation, no report, nothing whatsoever. So we still have time to prepare our lesson plan, and then we have prepare our teaching aids. Now with the advancement of technologies, teachers have to just sit, click, and prepare everything. It's very easy. But those days during my time, we actually prepare the card, prepare the teaching aids, do everything. We have time for all that. Okay, so back to the present situation. With the pandemic, new challenges surfaces. Teachers are not trained to teach online. None of us are trained in the teachers training colleges or in the universities to teach online. So when the pandemic hit, everyone was stunned. I was taken aback so much. Being a senior teacher myself, I shivered. How am I going to teach my students? How am I going to deal? I don't even know the latest application to use for teaching. But then school has taken a very proactive steps, whereby we have webinars almost like every week, and I myself spend almost 2 hours every day to learn, because I'm a slow learner. You see, a senior teacher is always a slow learner, and I cannot compete with the young teachers. The young teachers, they are very fast. Okay, I have to learn myself. Even though I attended the same course in school under this professional learning community, but I have to learn on my own because I'm a slow learner. So the young teachers are very fast. But then it takes up so much of the teacher's time. Teaching, preparing, marking for examination, learning all these new applications. But then now, after a few, I think almost 2 years now, I think all teachers are able to take up the challenge. So yes, I agree that co-curricular activity is sort of being not not place so much importance. Maybe if more hours are put into it, then we can see the result. But again, we need professional people, you see. A teacher like me, probably this year I hold a badminton club. Next year I will hold another club. Another year, another club. So you know, when jack of all trades, what will happen? Master of none. All right, so thank you, Mr. Boon. I pass it back to you.
Thank you so much, Puan Jemah. What I'm hearing so far from our speakers so far is there has been a change. Something changed. And I'd like to get to the bottom of that, hopefully by the end of the session, whether it was must be a change in government policy that has affected it so drastically from something that we used to enjoy to something that is basically a chore. But we'll get back to that in a short while. Next, I'd like to go to Hayley. So we already heard from our three speakers, and we'd like to get one perspective from somebody with the experience from international schools, so it's some of our different perspectives. So I'm very excited to hear your sharing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A few years ago, I was a principal in an international school. And there was one Monday morning where a parent stormed my office, demanding to know what I was going to do to discipline her child. Now, what seemed to have happened is that the child had been asked to do a task over the weekend, maybe preparation of dinner, something along those lines. And he'd said, and I don't know how politely, but he said he didn't want to do it in the way that his mother had asked him. He said that there was a better way to do it, and he wanted to do it differently. Now, his mother had seen this as an act of defiance, insubordination. She felt that he was being rude. The child's point of view was that he'd seen an opportunity to improve something. He'd seen it as an opportunity for problem solving. Now, where to draw the line in this particular issue? Now, we need an element of compliance in our schools. 40 children in one room, they need to do what they're told. But is there a way that we can encourage children to have innovation and problem solving that still gives respect? Now, our schools were designed for the first industrial revolution. You stand in a line, you do a task to a bell, one by one. It's been said a number of times this morning that the skills that employers need for this fourth industrial revolution are completely different. Problem solving comes up again and again. The engineers representative was talking about problem solving. The Malaysian bar was talking about English. It seems that our schools are not producing what we need. But where do we draw a line here? How can we create children who are active learners, problem solvers, that've got resilience, stress tolerance, flexibility? How can we do that within our school system? Now, I know employers, they don't want defiance. They don't want young people to not do what they're told. Most of the time. Some employers need their graduates to challenge the system. They need their graduates to challenge the status quo and the current state of affairs. So, how can we create a space to do that for our young people within the current school system? And that's where we come on to the co-curricular. Now, I'm very proud to be representing LEAPED today. Now, I'm a project lead in the company, and we currently work with 94 trust schools across the country. These schools have become models of schools that promote holistic outcomes for children. It's not just about academic attainment, although that is important. It's about recognizing the wider skill sets. It's about leadership. It's about confidence. I was speaking to one of the heads of COCO at a trust school in Klang only last week. And she was telling me that in 2021, they were only mandated to deliver 5 sessions of COCO. Now, this school had managed to deliver 30 sessions, online and virtually. Now, the reason they did this was not because they were told to, but because they recognized that the skills the children learned in that co-curricular time was vital to them having a cutting edge when they left school. The children needed exposure to those things. And this is a school with 80% B40 community. It's not a high-achieving school. Now, one student activity that she spoke about particularly was something called the student voice group. Now, student voice groups in trust schools are part of our interventions for the schools. But schools run them in lots of different ways. My colleague, Dr. Jahanti, she describes student voice as a movement. It's not just a thing that you do after school. It's a movement that should be in every single classroom. But it can also be run in co-curricular time. And there are some photos here of some of our co-curricular groups in action during the pandemic and after. It's students from high ability and low ability working together to make changes within their school community. Last week, I sent out a survey to all 94 trust schools to find out what the status of the student voice groups was. And what I was delighted to find was that the student voice groups were not only running, but actually they'd increased in importance. Because schools were presented with unparalleled problems. They had problems around attendance, they had learning loss problems. The student voice groups had been used as a way to consult with young people and find out what will work in their education. It was a way to give young people agency. Now, some examples of our student voice initiatives include student-led assemblies, suggesting classroom activities, online blogs, feedback on canteen food, as simple as that. Giving teachers some feedback on what's working for them in their classroom and otherwise. One teacher said in my survey that the student voice group had given the school a platform to listen to student opinions, so they weren't underestimated and that there was a chance for them to be validated and acted upon. Now, these are the skills that employers need. They need young people who can think for themselves, that can innovate, and that can solve problems when they're presented. But like any skill, that needs to be practiced. Skills like this idea of soft skills, they're not taught, they're practiced again and again, and students will make mistakes. Sometimes they'll be rude, sometimes they may come across as defiant. But that's what childhood and adolescence is about. It's about learning to read the room, finding out when your voice is appropriate, how to solve problems, so that when you go into the employment, which is a shark tank, you are not a minnow at the side, you are ready to hold your own. Now, this year I had the chance to meet some students from a student voice group known as PACE. It's the LEAP-Ed Partnership and Advocacy Forum. There's a picture of it on the screen. Now, this forum is made up of big cheeses in education. Datin or Azimah is amongst their number. They are powerhouses determined to change education, and we invited 10 students from our trust schools to enter this forum. My job was to work with the students before and to talk to them about what was going to happen. We talked about SDG 4. They told me about the difficulties they faced in their education, the inequalities they faced. One young woman spoke to me during the session, and she mentioned to me that she was having some difficulty having the confidence to speak up. Something had been said in the session that she didn't agree with, and she didn't know how to challenge it. She said that when she acted like a leader in her school, people accused her of being bossy, and people told her to be quiet. Now, what to say to that? I felt a little defeated after that conversation. This is a 15-year-old girl who's already lacking confidence in her ability to speak up. So I reflected on the conversation, and I did think that maybe if we had more conversations like that with our young people in school, maybe if we helped them navigate this path, maybe we might have a better chance at creating leaders of tomorrow. Now, I know when I first went into the workplace, I struggled to navigate that path. We all do when we become leaders. What if our schools started preparing us for that conversation? It might have saved me a few tears in my early days of employment. In curriculum time, there is a right and wrong answer. But in co-curricular time, it's a grey area. In curriculum time, it's yes, no, right, wrong, the teacher is the expert. In co-curricular time, it's very, very different. Samuel Goldwyn said, famously, and he said this a very long time ago, he said, "I don't want yes men around me. I want everybody to tell me the truth, even if it costs them their job." Well, that's a tricky line to follow. I should imagine we should give our students some preparation before going into that world. Now, the Malaysia Employees Federation in 2021 said that they lacked the lack of proficiency in English is a problem. And in the newspaper article I was reading, a school principal said that it was lack of English proficiency that was stopping Malaysian officials speaking up at international conferences. Now, I don't want to disagree with him, but I would respectfully add that it takes a great deal of courage to stand up and speak at an international conference. And if you've spent your entire school career being told to defer to authority, not being given an opportunity to have an opinion and to have your voice heard, if you're told that those higher up in the chain are the experts, how on earth can you expect someone to be brave enough to challenge it? We can't expect that as a skill to switch on at the age of 18, 21, 26, 30. It's something that needs to be practiced. So in student voice groups, there is a healthy respect for authority. Don't get me wrong. We do need that element of respect. But there is also an opportunity to say what you think, to try and solve problems. And it's a place to learn not to be a wallflower. It's a place to learn how to speak up and speak out. Now, in this century, over the COVID pandemic, there are no easy answers. Even as adults, we've got very few solutions to the problems. This morning during the conference, we heard a great deal of problems. What we need to do is find solutions to them. And maybe if we can allow our students to start innovating, to be creative in a safe way and let them model it, maybe we can try and find the leaders of tomorrow that will help us solve them. Education is about preparing children for the future. And the future workplace will need creative minds and it needs innovation. So we need to find a place alongside a knowledge-rich curriculum. We need the other skills, not to be taught, but to be practiced. So that those young people enter the workplace, they're ready to solve the problems that they will be facing. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Hayley. I'm very encouraged to hear that this kind of activities managed to flourish under some of the programs that Libet has done. And one point that I quite liked was the part that you basically insinuated that mentoring is actually quite key in building a child's confidence, and not when we must take heed not to do the other destroying factor. So thank you so much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we will have Q&A later on, but we still want to do a little bit of discussions with the panel first. I'd like to come back to Datin, Azimah once again. Datin, since you are chairing a PTA umbrella body, basically, I'd like to hear, you mentioned earlier a little bit about some of your thoughts, probably as a parent on some of these activities, but I'm also quite interested to know, I think we're also quite interested to know, what are some of the, parents' sentiments about co-curricular activities? Have you had a situation where you get complaints from some parents saying like, hey, this school is taking up too much of my kids' time in Coco, like, can you do something about it? That kind of thing. Do you get this kind of comments? Or the opposite true, is that hey, the school is not doing enough Coco, let's do more of that. Can maybe share some of that?
Well, I think that I think parents know that Coco needs to be done, So it's a matter of, and I think also parents realize that more needs to be done. So which is why especially urban parents, they organize other things, other activities for their children, either afternoons or weekends. And because I think co-curriculum and parents also believe that's what builds characters and personality. And even now we see that even something that you pick up during co-curriculum, it can be enhanced and it can even be turned into a career. It doesn't mean that whatever you study in school you will end up being that, but some successful people have made hobbies into successful careers. There.
This is the follow-up a little bit. Has the issue on, has there been any issues about cost, about timing? Because kids nowadays seems to have far lesser time than they did during my time. My time I can have a lot of naps and very little tuition. But kids nowadays, they seem to have, after school, they've got tuition classes, then they got piano classes, then they got gymnastics, and so on and so forth. Is there a challenge there? You feel maybe it's oversaturated or undersaturated, or what do you think?
I think the challenge now for parents, now that parents realize what's been, the PDPR that's been going on, they realize that what they need to do now is actually get children off devices and gadgets. And I think as a result, I think more parents are more eager to get their children out of the houses now than ever before. As a result.
Great, thank you, Datin. I'm going to immediately direct that next point to Noor. The parents are eager to get the kids out there because of the online mode of learning thanks to COVID. Can you share a little bit how perhaps the Scouts have dealt with this situation? Has it made things better going online, or has there been a hit in, well, you mentioned membership tripled, which is very, very encouraging to me, coming from also another uniform organization. But yeah, how has it been in terms of the technical challenges for the Scouts in this area?
It has been challenging because we are not able to run our usual programs, such as the camps, proficiency badges, merit badges, so on and so forth. But fortunately, our world body, I must say that the Scouts Association Malaysia is a member organization with the World Organization of the Scout Movement. And the World Organization of the Scout Movement, when the pandemic hit, they just quickly came up with many virtual activities, such as the Jamboree on the Air, Jamboree on the Internet, which is actually like a 3 days virtual Jamboree. Jamboree is like a gathering of Scouts worldwide. And the member organizations, in particular Scouts Association of Malaysia, picked that up to adopt it on a local level. Other than that, the existing programs, even before COVID, we've had a framework called the Better World Framework. The Better World Framework has programs such as, YUNGA, Youth United Nations Global Alliance, which is centered around conservation, environmental programs. We also have programs such as Scouts of the World Award, which is another conservation, but project management sort of award, and many other programs which, if you study, there are options for these awards to be done in remote. So most of the leaders, then what we did was we started looking into the books and all these programs that were there even before COVID, and we were like, oh, we could do this online. Oh, we could do this one online. Oh, we could do this en masse online as well. And what we do is that, based on discretion, there are some requirements that require to be done physically. We will KIV that to another time. So we keep the tabs open, but keep our stakeholders engaged. So that's what we've been doing. Yeah.
Great. I suppose the fear initially when we go online is some types of soft skills may be, you cannot, the stereotype is uniform groups do marching, right? So the whole physical bearing training is all neglected because you cannot do marching in front of a computer. Well, you can, but it's very awkward, you cannot serentak together, and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think that kind of problem will resolve itself. We will be going back to physical soon. 4th April, co-curricular programs are allowed. And I apologize to the crowd because it is a little bit of a public school-centric kind of discussion, but one that's also quite important. Perhaps I'd like to segue to that a little bit more for Norma. What to you've mentioned that 6 times a year is a little bit too little. What to you would be the ideal quantity in that case? Would you prefer the ministry to say, okay, a minimum of 20 per year? Or would you prefer to say, the ministry to say like, no, you do whatever you feel like doing, as long as you don't affect academic results of the students?
I don't want to sound biased, but I'm going to share with you a quote from the founder. I like to do this, let the authority speak. He says that a week of camp life is worth 6 months of theoretical teaching in the meeting room. Theoretical teaching, I'm not referring to academics, yeah? It could be co-curriculum done in the classroom. But I cannot stress, it's not about putting a number, 20 meets a year, 24, 52. It's not that, but it's the quality. But definitely 45 minutes per session is not going to cut it, yeah? But let's just be fair. Once a fortnight, if you need to go to the minimum, once a fortnight, 3 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, quality program. The ideal here is the delivery of the program, even if it's for an hour and a half. It should be impactful. It should have its SMART goals applied. The children should have very quality reflections after the program so that they grow into a more holistic person rather than, oh, check the box, I've done this. So yeah, that's my take. Yeah.
Great. For me, being from a similar industry, I would say, I come from a time where if there was no requirement per se, you join a society, a sports group, or a uniform organization based on your interests. It's a way to develop play. And for me, if you want to do something well, you need time. So even once a fortnight to me, it's difficult to practice. And a lot of these good societies, clubs, whatever you call it, what makes them stand out, the good units, especially for scouts, the good troops, right, is the fellowship, it's the friendships they build. So I wonder if the meets are cut down, if this can be achieved. But I understand that time is a constraint in the schools, and that's the other thing that we're going to go to next. So I'd like to come back to Puan Jemah. You mentioned earlier that with the number of responsibilities teachers have to take up in the schools, the side effect is suddenly there's a master of none situation. So is it too much of an expectation for teachers to be responsible for extracurricular activities and also be teaching and ensuring that the students do at the same time? Or could there be a different model, say teachers focus more on the studies, but we engage external instructors, just like the scouts, to come in so there's better focus? What do you think is a good way forward?
Yes, this issue has been lamenting by teachers for over the years, juggling with academics as well as extra co-curricular activities. They are two separate things, And then academic is very intense. You have to plan, especially those who are teaching exam classes. You are not just entering the classroom and teaching. There are more than that teachers have to do. You have to analyze the student, you have to plan program, and for example, if this term they didn't do well, what are the module or what are the ways that teachers have to plan in order to upgrade their marks. So that will take a lot of the bulk of the time of the teachers on the planning part. Okay, and then apart from that, it will be much, much better if the whole bulk of responsibility on co-curricular activity be shifted to, say, another party or whoever is actually trained in that field, so that students can really excel. And apart from that, I feel that students should be given the choice to choose. Good students who know what they want, they will just come directly to the teacher, I want to join this club, I don't want to join this club. So they should be given that opportunity rather than having everything. They will take part in the society, the club, uniform unit. So there's too much for them to focus on. When there's too much on your plate, you really cannot excel. So that is on the part of the students. And again, as I say, on the part of the teacher, teachers too have more than way too much on their plate. Too much to handle, you know. So yeah, I would really agree if there's a shift there that teachers only focus on academic and co-curricular activity will be handled probably by the community or some other parties. Okay?
Thank you, Puan Jamal. I think there was an incident that triggered a policy change in the MOE. I think there was an activity that led to death in Kampa 20 years ago or something, and that led to the ministry requiring, okay, any COCO meet activity, the teachers must be present. So in the end, 4 teachers will be assigned to one sports uniform group or society. And what teachers are facing is, if their lack of time, that's why they are trying to shift the numbers of meets down. So perhaps if this ruling can be revisited, saying like, no, the teacher advisor is purely that, a teacher advisor. If you want to run a sports group, a COCO group of any sort, student-led organization, you know, Form 5s, Form 4s, they have to take charge. I don't know, this is just me thinking out loud on the model that used to run way back in the old days. But yeah, we feel your pain, and hopefully the situation improves. All right, I'd like to come back to Ms. Haley once again. Trust schools, actually I was hoping, because it's very vibrant, trust schools, they seem to achieve a lot. Perhaps somebody can say that it's better resourced. But I wonder, is there a way to transfer that vibrancy from the trust schools to those non-trust schools that are around? Yeah, maybe some free consultancy. I know your boss is here, so yeah, but free advice.
Well, the first thing to know about trust schools is they're normal schools. They're not extra resourced. We have high-performing schools. We have Orang Asli schools, B40 schools, rural poor, urban poor, and some of the best institutions in Malaysia are trust schools. Why are they so vibrant? I don't know there's an easy answer to that, but it is about recognizing that there is more to school than academic attainment.
Is it the governance structure?
Yes, it's an MOE with Yayasan Amir, funded by private partnerships. And obviously we would love to see more of them, but they are just, they work with the government systems, you know, they're inspected with SKPMG2, which is what all schools, national schools have. But it is about that recognition that it's more than just academic results. It's not, COCO's not just a waste of time. It enhances the academic. If you're working really, really hard and you're burnt out as a student memorizing things, you need quality time outside of that to refresh. As adults, we know we need to go jogging, we need to go swimming, we need to do yoga. We can't sit in front of the computer all day. Why are we expecting any different from our students? They are young adults, and they also need time to develop as a whole person, not just in their books. And if we recognize that there are other measures other than A's and A stars, we say there are other things that we recognize as valuable, then maybe we can start to value that time and find more time in our curriculum, because then it will be valuable.
Right. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I think there's a general recognition that these things are important, and effort is required to realize these goals, especially in what we consider neglected, but it seems that may not be neglected all around the board. Some organizations, some schools may still be able to do it quite well. So yeah, I'm quite glad you mentioned all that. Yeah.
It's not neglected in some places, but it's about having the respect for it. It's not, you know, I sometimes think the word soft skills does it a disservice because it makes it sound like an extra as an adult and as an add-on, but actually it's central. And these so-called soft skills are actually what makes us a human and makes us achieve in the workplace. It's not my grade in maths.
Thank you so much. I just have one general question for the panel. Then after that, we will open it for Q&A. This is more towards the public schools once again, I'm afraid. Do you feel that the requirement from the ministry where it's compulsory for each student to join one sports, one society, and not all, and one uniform organization, do you feel that such a requirement is realistic? Or should it be, no, you maybe join just one or something, but not all three? What do you think? What are your thoughts on this? Is there enough time for all three? Or what do you think? Yeah.
Actually, you have to ask the kids about that. I think for the children, anything that keeps them out of the classroom and out of the house must be a good thing. So I think the more you give them to pick from, the better it is for them. Because they have more time with their friends. That's what's important to kids.
I also think that childhood and adolescence is about exploring. You don't know what you're going to be good at. So why not try and encourage children to do as many things as possible? They don't have to be perfect at it. It's about exploration.
Many parents said to me, you know, the child, he doesn't know what he wants. But the founder of the Scouting says, when in doubt, ask the boy. So, but depends on demographics. There's some children who, yeah, they can make more informed decisions based on upbringing. And some just are clueless, and you sort of have to put some form of regulation. So, yeah, that's my answer. There's no yes or no about it, yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Puan?
Yes, there are two sides of a coin here. For students who know what they want, then they will be able to choose the correct, say the good, maybe sports or game, whatever for them. But for the other students, it is best to expose them to everything so that they know their strengths and weaknesses, as what I said earlier. So I just want to share a very short experience story of my students. I was teaching this girl Form 2 class on literature, The River. We are familiar with the poem. So when I was asking them questions and all that, there is one girl who had never seen a river before. So for her, a river is that big monsoon drain near her own flat. So that is a river for her. So this kind of situation is where camping comes in. So by students engaging themselves or joining the camping trip, they actually learn a lot. They learn more than their whatever that they learn from books, you know, getting into the jungle, even getting bitten by mosquitoes. Those are life experiences which students should get themselves acquainted to, or they should learn all this. So actually co-curricular activities is important. Only thing when there's too much for students to handle in school, academic, and a lot of activities, it becomes a chore and it becomes a burden, and it's something sometimes they don't like to take part in. So probably when there is a proper time allocated, it can be fun. All extracurricular activities can be fun. So that's my opinion.
I'd like to ask a follow-up question, Puan Jamah, if you don't mind. They say that this generation is a digital generation, right? They are addicted to TikTok and YouTube, and
yes,
you know, they like to stick their faces into the screen.
Right.
Based on your experiences in school, maybe perhaps before COVID rather than during COVID, has the interest and desire from students to be involved in co-curricular activity been ideal? Like, have they been, you know, do they want more co-curricular activities, or they're like, oh, you know, need to stay back in school, I want to go home actually, you know, that kind of sentiment?
Yeah, it all depends actually. Some students are very good in academic, they excel in academic, so they become like the star in the class. But for some students who are not academically inclined or they are not good, co-curricular activity is actually a platform for them to excel. Being able to run the fastest, you know, these are the platform that they want. So it all depends actually. And then some students are also being burdened by other activities like tuition over the weekends and other chores. Actually, students are doing so much. They're actually handling a lot. Both students and teachers are also at the same situation. Both are very stressful. I think if we lessen on the student, they will enjoy everything.
Thank you so much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we have about less than 10 minutes left. I'd like to open the floor to Q&A. For those on Zoom, we are also opening it to you as well, so you can just post your question in the Q&A panel. We have one comment from the participant saying that, well, this is a postgraduate student. Sorry for the university folks, this one has been very secondary school and primary school focused. Secondary, in higher education, you kind of can choose, you're an adult, right? So you can choose whatever you want, and you should have the independence to chase. But so we'll focus on this age group that requires a little bit more guidance. So apologies for that. This participant is saying that that there's a lack of time for adults in postgraduate to pursue extracurricular activities. Yes, true. I cannot remember when's the last time I played basketball because of work, but I understand what you mean. Being an adult is a different ballgame altogether. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, less than 10 minutes. Any questions from the floor, please? Yes, Dato Jails.
Thank you.
Is the PA team, the microphone? Also, please direct your question to which speaker, yeah?
Thank you so much. I sat here and I started as a teacher some 20 years ago, teaching in primary school. I'm a product of Maktab Program Sultan Abdul Halim. It's the first time I sat here listening to a number of you who are really in the education, primary and secondary. What I heard today is not what I've heard before. And it seems that it never changed in terms of the importance of co-curricular activities. So my question is to Datin. I think, what is it needed for people like you who are so involved in this to tell the policymakers, the stakeholders, that if we continue to focus on academic assessment in primary schools, secondary schools, and everybody aiming for 10 A's, 12 A's, all these things, how then can the importance of what you're saying just now, which I feel is so important, if I have that opportunity again, I would do that in primary school where I first taught when I was in Sarawak. But after that, I went into the private sector. I straight go into higher education sector, and actually I completely forgot about this importance. And we keep blaming the products of the secondary schools to us and say that, why are these secondary schools coming to us, students who are not ready to take on tertiary education, English is not good enough, and so on. But now I hear that, what is holding back with the policymakers? Are they not listening to you that formative assessment in different kinds can be actually given to co-curricular activities, the uniform units, and so on? What's holding back our nation? It's very sad. Thank you.
Datin?
I think as far as Ministry of Education is concerned, having been with the council, the MPPK, for 2 years with them, I find that they, the whole public is complaining about the education system. The problem is the ministry thinks there's nothing wrong. So the ministry thinks there's nothing wrong. There's nothing else, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. You know, we sat for almost 100. We had almost 100 meetings in that 2 years. We had subcommittees for different things, and now after three education ministers, and during that short period of time, I think our recommendation is sitting on somebody's table. I think it's on the minister's table, you know. So no matter how much effort you put in, if they realize, they think that, you know, everything's fine, then nothing's going to move. And in fact, I think for a long time we've been saying, let's do what the international schools are doing for co-curriculum, have a different set of, have a whole department just to focus on COCO. But at the same time, in the same breath, the ministry will say, oh, we're providing holistic education. But, you know, at the end of the day, they're still emphasizing on examinations. But I think now that, you know, UPSR is out of the way, and then PT3 also is more project-based assessment, I think maybe eventually we will slowly come out of that mentality lah, the academic mentality. Unfortunately, you still have to be the SPM, whatever it is, if you want to pursue higher education. You know, so I think you know, we talk about social skills and all that, and I think parents also realize the importance of you know, co-curriculum, extracurricular activities, time with the family outside school, you know. And I think as society gets more affluent, I think parents and families themselves will start to spend more time on that, you know, in addition to boosting the academic performance of the children. So I think I realize that parents cannot totally depend on schools. They still have to do their bit. If you totally depend on schools and not give the access to your children actually will come out quite mediocre. And if you're willing to take the risk, it's fine. But, you know, I see that if parents don't put in extra time, effort, money, you're not going to see outstanding children. Yeah.
Thank you, Datin. Sounds a little bit like there's some politics involved, what you mentioned earlier. Okay, I think we can just take two more questions. Is there another question from the floor? I do have one. Oh, Nina, one moment, yeah. I do have one question online. This delegate is asking us. I have attended many interviews previously in my career. As I remember, none of the interviewers asked me about co-curricular and why. And I think it's insinuating that co-curricular is not important to employers. So what are your thoughts on that?
The employer may not ask a question directly about a co-curricular, but they will ask a question about a time you solved a problem, a time you faced a challenge and overcame it, a time when you communicated or led a team. You know, employers rarely ask about curriculum. They do ask about giving examples of when you have demonstrated a skill. And I think that that's where co-curricular can really help, because it broadens children's experience. You know, going back to your river suggestion, how can a child really academically understand a poem about a river if they haven't seen a river? So that's what co-curricular can do, because it increases the cultural capital that those children have. If you're just looking at books and the curriculum content, when an employer asks you something general, a piece of general knowledge you might not know, it's co-curricular that can give you that knowledge, that bigger picture of the world. And that's what employers want, I think.
Right.
Can I just add on?
Yeah, sure.
Can I just add on, Boon? I also conduct interviews for scholarships, and you know, you could have, you probably undecided between two students, who to give the scholarship to. Two students, same results, but we'll pick the one with more focal. That's it, simple.
Thank you so much. My answer to that is, yeah, they haven't had an interview with me. If not, I'll, you know. Okay, anyway. Okay, we got one question from Miss Nina.
Thanks, Boon. I just wanted to actually answer your question about what makes this.
Sure.
It really is not rocket science. It really is about integrating curriculum and co-curriculum, right? I mean, the problem is that in our education system, we create this divide when actually they should feed off each other. And what we do in trust schools, as I said, there's no extra money or resources or infrastructure, but it's to create an environment where it can flourish. And that is essentially answering your question. That it's a culture and mindset. What we go and do in a trust school is change the mindset. And the analogy I always use is you have a garden, you can put as many beautiful plants in the soil, but none of it will grow if your soil isn't properly fertilized. And that is the problem with the MOE, right? They don't accept that there's something wrong with the soil. And instead of asking the gardener where things are flourishing, how did you make your garden flourish? They go and trample because they don't like it when an outside gardener comes in and is successful. So just to recap, trust schools are demonstration models which prove that we can get those holistic outcomes if we focus on the right developmental priorities. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nina. It's a wonderful one metaphor. Okay, as we are running out of time, I'd just like to ask our speakers to probably give like maybe 30 seconds of your final thoughts, and then I will do a quick wrap up and we can call the session a day. Yep, maybe I'll start with Norma first.
30 seconds.
Okay, a little bit more than that.
In my view, co-curriculum definitely helped me in my, how do I chart my life. I'll just share with you, all my employers, when they look at my transcript and everything else, and they go like, "Ooh, what's this paper? This is King Scout Award." "Oh, you King Scout ah? You Scout ah? Okay. I think there's a chance to hire you. Last time I also scout, or somebody was a scout, and we find that they're problem solvers. And I believe that my employers always say, actually the factor is the trust factor. They say, "Oh, I feel I can trust you. So yeah, you're hired." Yeah, so I think co-curricular is very important.
Thank you, Norma. Datin?
Definitely, co-curriculum is important, without doubt. And I think that, again, aside from what's offered in schools, I think, again, I like to mention leadership. And I think it's good for students to go into organizations which have a long history, such as Scouts, Pandu Putri, and St. John's Ambulance, because they already have a structure. So, and if students follow that structure, and I think it's something that they can put in their resume as they move forward in their life.
Thank you, Datin. Puan, Jawab?
I think all of us agree that this extracurricular activity is very important in building a well-rounded character of our students. However, it all goes back to the root of the problem. Something has to be done about this. And probably I would like to share, if we could stop introducing new subjects. Now, the latest one was a suggestion to introduce politics. So like teachers were so appalled by the idea. So if we stop introducing new topics and we focus more, or focus on how to solve the present problems that we have. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Puan Jemma. And Hayley?
Thank you. Okay, I'm a guest in Malaysia. I've come from the British education system, and there's been a few things said about the UK system today. Now, I left the UK system for a reason. It's not perfect by any stretch. Actually, the Malaysian system has got so many bright spots. The students' hard work, the ethic, the work ethic, the integrity of those young people that I've met through working with some of the trust schools is to be so commended. And I love working with them. What I would love to see, though, is for them to have some more confidence and some more belief that they, there's nothing more frustrating when a young person says to me, "I don't want to speak English because I'll make mistakes." And it's like, your English is perfect. Why are you worried? But that's what co-curricular can do. It can give that confidence, and the more they practice, skills are not taught, they're practiced. So if we can get young people to practice, that would be great. And we need to see it not as separate from academic. Now, the person on the line made the joke that as adults we don't have co-curricular. No, we don't. We go to yoga class and we call it work-life balance. We know that if all we do is work all day, we're not productive. As adults, we do have co-curricular. We go to yoga, we go to the gym, we go and eat with our friends, hopefully, when we're not in a pandemic. And actually, children need that opportunity as well, I think. And if we're going to raise the leaders of tomorrow, we need to give them space to practice and learn and be brave and courageous. And I think that's where co-curricular can really help.
Thank you, Hayley. So to sum up, there is a consensus that extracurricular activities are still very important. There are efforts to improve them. There may be some systemic issues, especially in the public schools, that can be resolved, can be reviewed and made better. And growing realization from parents, present-day parents, that it is very important to lend their kids a job. And kids today, children today, students today, there's still a desire, and we need to be able to give them the ecosystem for them to choose and develop those skills, experiences and friendships more meaningfully. So with that, I'd like you to give a hand to all our speakers. I really enjoyed this discussion, and I thank you so much for your participation.